Welcome to Morning Infusion with Dr. Reed, where we are intentional about connecting you with other entrepreneurs that have overcome and want to provide value to the audience. It's Dr. V here, where our coaching program teaches nurses to work from anywhere around the world, making money and owning their own time, building profitable nurse coaching and consulting businesses. So this morning, I have the phenomenal Dr. Ophelia Byers. And so tell us a little bit about you. Get like a brief bio. If you had to describe yourself, tell us who you are.
So good morning, Dr. V, and to the listeners out there. I am Dr. Ophelia Byers. Call me Ophelia. How do I describe myself? I would say as a waymaker, a word that my grandmother often used. In a nutshell, that is who I am. That manifests in my roles as a wife, as a mother. Professionally, I am a chief nursing officer of a 500-bed hospital in New Jersey and also the associate chief nurse executive of that healthcare system. I am also the founder and principal of Citroom LLC, which is a leadership coaching practice that's also focused on cultural cultivation from a DEI lens.
Now, when you say DEI, because I don't think everybody knows what DEI is. So tell us what DEI is.
Sure, it's diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I should also add probably the B and J, which is belonging, focused on psychological safety and justice.
I love it. I love it. I love it. So we're gonna go back to the root, because that's just kind of how we roll on this podcast. We want to find out, a little bit about you as a person. So as you were growing up, so did you think that you were going to become a nurse? Like, how did that come about?
Yeah, it's a great question. As I was growing up, no, I did not. I didn't. I thought I maybe would be a lawyer or something. I think that's what I was always told because was often talking and uh, arguing my point. So got into college and decided that I was very intrigued by science. My great grandmother, my maternal great grandmother, was a nurse midwife in Scriven, Georgia. According to our family, delivered over 5,000 babies across Scriven and Macon. And I thought, well, maybe I will go into obstetrics. And initially thought I'd be an OBGYN, was on the pre-med track, and then learned more about nursing. We had a very strong nursing program at my alma mater, my undergrad alma mater, Rutgers University in Camden, New Jersey. And I became intrigued, and it was very competitive. And I thought, you know what? I can get into this school. And so I applied to the School of Nursing and went on from there. My first job was as a pediatrics nurse, very specific neonatal ICU rehab unit at Thomas Jefferson University in Philadelphia. And I did travel nursing after a year of nursing because I was an expert after a year and decided I could go travel. And I did travel nursing for 4 years, then settled in New York, decided to go back to what my original inspiration was. I became a labor and delivery nurse and found my absolute love in L&D, and then went on to be a women's health nurse practitioner.
I love it. I love it. I love it. I love L&D nurses. I always say this because I was an ER nurse for years, and L&D nurses are amazing because what they do is they take the load off of us because we're not trying to deliver nobody's children. Okay, all right. So I love it. I love it. I love it. And so we do love y'all. So anyway, so you became a nurse practitioner, and then what made you go back to get your doctorate degree?
Gosh, that was years later. After becoming a nurse practitioner, I actually did not practice as an NP. I was
Oh,
really never interested in practicing as an NP. Little bit of a nerd. My interest was really understanding the physiology of labor and birth to the level that physicians understood it, or as close as possible. That's really how intrigued I was. So I went back to school solely to understand more about what happens before moms come in to labor and delivery, and what happens after, and also care of women across the lifespan. While I was an L&D nurse, I was encouraged to become a charge nurse. I was not interested in becoming a charge nurse. It seemed incredibly stressful. I was the person who, because of my peds background and neonatal nursing background, I always helped with the preemie deliveries and things like that. I was a charge nurse's best friend and wingman. That's all that I wanted. I did not want stress. Still, I was encouraged, urged to do it. And so I did, and really found that I enjoyed that role, the role of leading, the role of being responsible for operations, even if it was only for a shift. And that started my love of leadership. So I then went on, charge nurse, assistant nurse manager, director. And when I became a director is when I decided to go back for my DMP. And I attended Case Western University, Case Western Reserve University. And it was a my love of leadership. That is my focus now. That is my practice. And people say, well, what do you do as a nurse? I'm a leader. Leadership is a paradigm and a practice, and I hone it in the same way that I honed my clinical practice as a nurse. And this opportunity to have a doctorate in organizational leadership was very attractive to me, as I wanted to really fully flesh out my leadership practice.
And so I'm gonna come back to the leadership part,
Mhm.
but it is completely interesting to me that you went to school solely to learn the AMP of labor delivery and
Yeah.
how the body works. I love that because the reality is that I never thought about, like, there are people who go into nursing solely to go into leadership, like they never want to work at the bedside, right? And I've never thought about that. When one of my friends told me that one time, I was like, that's interesting. So let's come back to the leadership portion of it. So what aspects of leadership did you really really like?
What I most loved is that all the things that I thought didn't make sense, one of two things happened. They either made sense once I understood it more and understood it from the lens of leadership, or they continued to not make sense. And I understood that I had the power to affect them and make change. And it's not just positional power. And it's a leader in you, right? It's understanding that you can affect change no matter what role you're in. I didn't quite understand that as a staff nurse. I thought that it had to be about positional power. Once I got the positional power, even as a charge nurse for that shift, I realized, like, oh, I could have been doing this if I had known the nuances, if I'd stood a little bit more about it. So for me, leadership represents that. It is understanding more about how stuff works. I always just use that phrase, how stuff works. So understanding more about how stuff works so that my opinions are rooted in reality and fact, and not in just kind of supposition based on my outside view. So that's really important to me, that people understand how stuff works, but also if it still doesn't make sense, you can do something about it.
I always say that if you're not at the table, then you're on the menu.
Mhm.
And one of the things that I'm very clear on is I wanted to be at the table all the time.
Mm.
So let me ask you this. Now, when you became that leader, were you able to? Because I think that a lot of times the reason why, like when you were on the outside and you were looking in, I was one of the reasons why I was not able to understand it was simply because nobody ever explained it to me. So tell me how you infuse that into your leadership practice. Like not just your leadership practice, but just as a general rule, how that can be done, right?
Yeah. Well, there's a bi-directional accountability.
Okay.
The accountability of the leader, we know about shared governance or professional governance that we've learned about from Tim Porter or Grady, right? And it's a a cornerstone, or even really the foundation of the magnet recognition program. So, firm believer in shared governance, that the people closest to the work are the best knowers of the work. So as a leader, my responsibility is to engage those people. And I see engagement is not just about a person's engagement in a process, but engagement is also about actively bringing people in. So that is my responsibility as a leader, is to engage those voices, that knowledge of the work, that firsthand knowledge of the work. There's also a responsibility on the people who are closest to the work to ask what you want to know about. If something doesn't make sense, say, it doesn't make sense. Why is this happening? So I think that there, to really empower ourselves, again, I um, firmly believe people are the closest, that are closest to the work know it best. I also believe that I don't empower people. I don't believe that's something that we give people. I believe that what we do is make room for people's innate inherent power. So that's my job as a leader. But people have to also exercise their power. And so it is about asking questions. It is about asserting one's views. This is what I'm seeing. This is what I think will work. So there is a bi-directional accountability in terms of getting at the table. And that's one of the ways that I was able to advance in my career. I was always asking questions. What is the why behind the what? Okay, great. That's what you want us to do. Why? How does that affect the overarching goal? What are the process measures? How are we going to get there? What can I do to help us get there? Right. So, not even just putting it on the leader, but what do you need from me to get there? Because I am very sure that I have something to offer this process, but it's not clear to me yet how I would do that. So, from your lens, what does that look like? And also saying, how can I help you with that? Because that's how I got to a lot of tables, even before I had positional power to be in those rooms,
Mhm.
was saying, what do you need from me? How can I help you get there? And you'd be surprised how many leaders are so hungry for people who are willing to put themselves out there and help out and offer their views and their insights. And that got me into a lot of rooms. Often I would, be brought in an advisory capacity from the front line or from a lower level of leadership, or covering my leader when they were out on PTO or things like that. And those are the ways that you become more visible and more invited. Your voice becomes invited.
I think that is key, and that is something that I think that a lot of people really don't embrace, is that bidirectional leadership, and understanding that in order for you to ensure that your patients are taken care of and they're taken care of efficiently and effectively, that you have to, number one, bring that information to to your leader, but not just that. Um, Not being afraid to do that either, because at the end of the day, we are saving lives. And I used to be, and that why is huge, because like I'm not just doing things because I'm not a robot, right? I'm not just doing things just because I just want to do it. I need to know why I'm doing this. Why do I have to go through this process, and understanding that. So there's a book by Simon Sinek, and it's the, I want to say it's The Power of Why, something. Anyways, it has Start With Why, I think
Yeah.
is the name of the book. And the one of the things that he talked about is the why, and that really changed my life. It really changed my vantage point. And so I started asking why. Every time I would do anything, I would ask why. Why are we doing this? Why? What's the process? And then I had to understand in depthly the reason why. And then I could help you to understand as the leader, if I was at the bedside, help you to understand how we could do this a little bit different in order for us to make effective change. So that's key. I love that.
Absolutely.
So now talk about workplace culture. So tell us a little bit about how you would describe, the ideal workplace culture, and how you move forward with that workplace culture. How do you cultivate it?
Yeah. The ideal workplace culture, it's interesting. Obviously, that's very subjective.
Okay, all right.
And it's certainly up to the leader, organizational leaders to set that vision for their teams and with their teams. Firm believer in visioning being a collaborative process. Let's get together and determine who we are. What is our identity as a culture? And not just as an organization, but what is our identity as a culture, as a group of people who are gathered together to enact this mission? And then what do we need to bring our identity forth so that it's very, very clear to our customers being patients and families or whomever the consumer is, but also our internal customers, our employees, people who come into the organization who are hired, people that we're trying to retain. Will our identity be clear to them? Right. So I think it's one, having some sense of who you are as a culture, who you want to be. Right. So not only this is who we are, but this is who we aspire to. There should always be um, a stretch goal. And that's what the vision is about, right? The vision is the stretch goal. Um, so where are we trying to get to? And then what do we need to get there? What are the resources? Obviously, there's human resources, and I don't mean the department, but also the department, but the employees. There are the customers who are going to help us continue to form our identity, but through their feedback. So, what are our resources? What are the fiduciary resources? What are the technological resources? Those types of things. So, I think that a culture that is constantly self reflective. So, self, we often think about as an individual, which it always does start with the individual. But once we become a culture, we're a culture of one, as we've heard said, and the culture becomes an entity. And that culture has to be self reflective also. So who am I as a culture? Who are we? What are we doing? Are we staying true to who we said we are? I think that that is the basis of authentic leadership, that always looking at the person in the mirror or the culture in the mirror and starting there. Um, Continuously monitoring. I love quality improvement principles. I think they can be applied to so many things. We always often think about clinical quality, or quality assurance in terms of technology and things like that. I think that we can use those same quality improvement principles to culture. And the ISO, I believe it's the 9001, has like 7 quality improvement principles. And they're very much focused on checking in with people to identify what the issues are, to come up with solutions, and to continuously monitor and to learn their feedback on the process. And so I think that a culture that does that, that's very people focused, as you hear people say, people first, is one that's going to be successful and ideal, because it's not going to be that every single day or every single situation the culture gets it right. That's not what an ideal culture is to me. An ideal culture is one that you have the assurance that when things go wrong, they're going to be fixed. They're going to be fixed to your satisfaction, even if they're not perfect. An ideal culture is one in which people have assurance, and that assurance is what we call psychological safety. Is knowing that things are going to go well for the most part, and when they don't, we have sound, equitable processes to address them to our satisfaction.
Cool. I love that. I love that. I love that. Now I'm going to pivot a little bit. We're going to start talking about um, being a Black leader in healthcare.
Mm.
And so let's talk about that a little bit, and how maybe that is different than not being a Black leader in healthcare. I know I've got my own particular, but anyway, you go for
Mhm.
it. And how that is played out, maybe.
Yeah. So that could be a whole show, and
Uh,
I'd love to hear your views on it. Being a Black leader in healthcare is a microcosm of being a Black person in America or
mm,
in this world, right? It's no different. And it comes with all of the same challenges in principle, that are just simply unique to the environment, but in principle are the same. So the same challenges that we have in everyday life, um, around, I think about the talk. You often hear Black parents reference the talk that they have with their Black children, especially their sons, but also obviously their daughters. Before you go out driving, here's the talk. Um, Here's how you conduct yourself should you be stopped by the police. I say that Black leaders in healthcare or Black leaders anywhere or Black employees anywhere have to kind of give themselves the talk before they go into work. And it has absolutely nothing to do with the police on their way to work. It has to do with policing at work. um, and it has to do with how do you conduct yourself when you are in situations that are or can't or have the potential to be adverse based on someone's perception of who you are in the world. So again, taking just that fundamental theme of what do we need to do to survive, right? Um, that is a talk that Black leaders, especially, and I say especially because we are often in, as we talked about, those rooms and those tables that we historically have not been at, right? Especially as you get to director level and above. That's probably director level is one of the hardest levels for Black leaders, leaders of color to get to, that level just before the executive level. And once you get to that level and above, you are often not among your peers racially. And it becomes a game of survival in many ways. So, in a nutshell, it is the same reality. And we are constantly trying to navigate it. And there are ways that we try to navigate it that are helpful in the short term, things that we've heard about, code switching, for example. They help us in the immediate. They are not necessarily helpful for where we need to get to in terms of diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging, and justice. They are not helpful for the leaders who are coming after us. They are not helpful for making true structural change in terms of anti racism in the workplace. But for a lot of people in that moment, it's what gets them through. Part of what I try to do in my coaching practice in Citrum is to help leaders be more expansive thinkers. Let's not just do what helps get us through, but let's think about how we are going to make fundamental change in our roles, how we're going to use the positional power we have or aspire to make fundamental change and make these workplaces psychologically safer for other Black leaders and leaders of color.
I love that. I love, love, love. And and I would love to have a conversation on how that can play out. And I just, because I'm not like I really have this in depth, like these conversations that I've had that I saw like the writing on the wall. You know what I'm saying? So for me, it was just like I was in a room, and it was when I was going back to get my DNP. It was in a room, and it was a bunch of executive officers in the room, and we have a bigger hospital system that we're attached to, and they came to the inclusion and diversity officer came to the room to have the conversation about the fact that we as a city are about 50% African Americans. And so we should be, that's really how our leadership should look. And I looked around the room and besides her, I was the only Black person in the room, right? And I remember feeling like, okay, well, this is not going to work. And that's one of the things that really, really honed me in and really helped me to move forward into wanting to be at those tables, to wanting to help other nurses to be at that table. And I had one of my friends, and she said that it was an organization where she worked at. It's a huge organization. As a matter of fact, most of us know the organization. I won't say the name, however, she said that there were 180 leaders in the organization, and one of them was Black. And she said that she just didn't understand. And I really feel like in order for us to be able to serve our communities and serve them well and understand the pain points of our communities, then especially when you're predominantly Black, then you need to understand that you need to have someone at the table to understand the challenges of your community for sure. And so those are the things that I have seen, and I can really go into depth for years about that. But we're not going to do that. We're going to talk about you. So now let's talk about your coaching. So you have coaching and consulting for leaders, and so tell me about the coaching and consulting that you do for leaders.
Sure. For years I have been coaching and mentoring and sponsoring, and more importantly for me, way making. And I can tell you how I see that distinction. But it occurred to me, this is something I've been doing for years. I have mentees I've worked with. I've seen them through 2 promotions now, or just different situations, which is why I use Sitch Room. It's short for Situation Room, like we have in the White House, which is just a space where the President of the United States goes when there's a crisis to be advised. And I use that name. One, I use Sitch just because it is a little more casual. And I wanted it to be a place where people come and feel comfortable and feel at home. But it also recognizes that the person who's entering the Sitch Room is a very important person, much like the President of the United States. That you're coming into that room with your own light, with your own knowledge, with your own unique lived experiences. And it's not about coming in and me making you better necessarily, right? It's about you coming in with this amazingness that you have to offer the world, but you're having a challenge. And I'm there to help illuminate that challenge and work with you to find the solution that is already within you. So my logo has actually 2 light bulbs in it, in the O's. One is an up light and one is a down light, to really show 2 different perspectives. And that really is the client's and mine. But both are lights nonetheless. So it is that recognition that whoever enters is extremely important, but is having a challenge. And I'm there to offer expert guidance. It is for experienced leaders. It is for emerging leaders. It is for the leader in you, for someone who may not be in a former leadership role yet, but we are leaders every day in different aspects of our lives. And we have to make leadership decisions in different aspects of our lives. And the Sitch Room can help with navigating those decisions and challenges.
I love it. I love it. I love it because everybody needs a coach and consultant, and I don't think that's something that we have for a mentor, but I don't think that that's something that we were really necessarily taught in nursing school. But it is highly important. Highly, it is essential to your success because it breaks down time and it gets you from point A to point B in a quicker way. So I love that you're doing that, and I love that you are being specific. So how long have you been doing it, and where can we find you?
I've been doing it formally for a year, informally for 10. But Sitch Room is a year old. And you can find me at sitchroom.com. That's SITCH room.com. curveballs.com. And certainly look over the website. Feel free to schedule a complimentary discovery session, and come, to glow up.
I love it. I love it. I love it. So anything else that you want the audience to know before we get out of here?
Before we go, I would simply say to anyone, you have a leader in you. Again, you have power. No one can empower you. You can only self empower. What people can do is make room for your power to be its most powerful self. And that's my job as a leader. And hopefully, all of your leaders, formal leaders, understand that that is their role. But even if they don't, know that you have that power. I would say trust yourself and assert yourself. Allow yourself to shine and take up space, and do it for the betterment of our world and patient and family care, and also care of yourself and our community.
I love it. I love it. I love it. It's that Marianne Williamson quote, that we all of us have a light, basically. And it is our job, it is our responsibility to let that light shine so that we can empower other people to do the same. So I love it. So, and of course, that was the vitalism. Okay. It wasn't really truly how it is. And, if everybody wants to go back and look that up, they can. So if you want to learn more about how to monetize your knowledge as a nurse coach, we have a Facebook group. It's actually now called the Millionaire Nurse CEO. You can join us live for our masterclass. Our next masterclass will be April 18th, 2023. We will also be having the Millionaire Nurse CEO Conference. It's coming up August 25th and 26th here in Rocky Mount, North Carolina. It's going to be an amazing event, and I can't wait to see everybody in the room. Go to our website, vpnursing.com, and I ask that you like and share this podcast. And you guys have a phenomenal rest of your day.